Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick and this is MSFS Flight Plans, the coolest little corner of the sim community where we blend aviation and adventure into one awesome experience with each and every flight. So after some prompting from one of our channel members, I decided to come back out here to Nazca, Peru to see if it looks any better than the last time we flew out here, which was almost 2 years ago. And if you remember that flight, there wasn't much to see other than the largest of the really long, straight Nazca lines and really thick ones, really high contrast. Well, that was before I had started deploying the map enhancement for any of our trips, so all we had to work with was the default map in the sim, which was not great, and still isn't really. But we're going to use the Google Pro map for this one, and it is going to make a huge improvement. As you're about to see, you're going to be able to spot literally everything out here, and most of it is going to be pretty clear. So just a heads up with that, if for some reason you don't like using the map enhancement, it is not going to look anything like this when you fly it if you fly with the default map. And just a word about that before we get going, I was so nervous about installing that for the longest time. I was afraid it would mess something up with my computer, mess up the sim, might get me arrested by the sim police. I have had zero problems at all. It was easy to install, it's very easy to use, it's caused no issues with the sim, and from what I can tell as far as it being illegal, I've heard a lot of people say that, and maybe it is. But I was looking around in the MSFS forums, and the only thing I could see that made Microsoft upset about us using it, which frankly I really don't care about at this point, was they said that you might get banned from the forums if you talk about the application. So just a heads up with that. But we're going to use it, and this is the Pro version, so you'll have to pay for it. If you just want to test it out, I think it's about $5 for a month, and I have no affiliation with those guys. But if you want it for the whole year, which you will if you test it out, because it's going to make 90% of your flights look better, I think it was like $15-20 for the whole year. Totally worth it. So again, if you get it, you can use the free version, which will have the latest Bing Maps and the Google Maps. It's not the regular Google Map. That won't look good. You need the Google Pro Map, #1. There's 2 of them that are in there. That's the one I've got in for this one. And this crazy-looking ugly duckling we've got in front of us is the latest release from Cowan Sim. It is the Cessna, yes, Cessna CH1. You've probably seen some of the reviews for it already. I've heard mixed reviews from other people that have either seen the reviews or flown it. I absolutely love the thing. You know I like weird aircraft. This is definitely weird. The only helicopters that Cessna ever made, and it was kind of a failure. They didn't make that many of them, and I don't think there's any that are still airworthy right now. I think they have a prototype replica in a museum somewhere. So as far as the flight dynamics go, I have no idea how anyone could even try to get it, but what's unique about this, is if you couldn't tell, is the engines in the front kind of looks like a Cessna with a bubble on top of it, like a 172 or something. And then the shaft, the drive shaft for that top rotor, look, it goes right up between the pilots there. But looks great inside and out. The only issue with 2024, and I got this from Cowan Sim site, and they say it right on the site, it's good to go for 2020. There's a better version coming for 2024. Everything is working totally fine that I could tell. Everything inside works. The only thing, which is kind of important, that wouldn't work is when I tried to engage the starter. So that's why we're having to start with it started, but I'm not going to walk underneath the rotor, but just kind of give you a 360-degree view of this. And there are some much more in-depth reviews out here about it. All right, let's hop in and look at the maps real quick, and then we'll get going. Nope, got to click on this screen first. Okay, so for one thing, you got a little hatch here with the Cowan Sim thing. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. It's great. Good job, Cowan Sim. And check this out. Working cigar lighter. It'll pop out in a second. Absolutely amazing. Detailing inside is wonderful. You got the vibrations down. If you want to pop the doors off, you just click these little vents right here. The sound changes. Everything's great. The only thing I wish this had, even though you don't use it too much in helicopters, is a VSI. You can't really tell, and sometimes with this, because the nose is sticking out, it's kind of hard to just look out the window and gauge if you're ascending or descending. I'm sure the real one probably didn't have one either, but that would have maybe been a little bit slice of life, quality of life improvement if they had one. Not Cowan Sim's fault. I don't think they put one in the original, but you'll figure it out eventually. Pretty easy to take off and land. When you're trying to get stationary, because it's a little bit nose heavy, it's a little bit difficult if you're in the air. Kind of tough, but we'll work it out. All right, maps real quick. So first, a little nav map. If you don't have little nav map and you're just trying to find where this is on the world map, if you look at Peru over here, you'll see where the coast of South America kind of bends back to the north. If you go south of that furthest west point, there's this other little point right down here. It's pretty close to that. It's just a little bit southeast of that. And I will include this flight plan in here. This one is also incomplete because this is the only airport out here. We're not going to circle all the way back around to this one. So instead, I placed an alien saucer pad out here because this thing kind of looks like a flying saucer, and they were landing some aliens out here. So that's where I've ended it, but we did start at the airport out here. And in the sim, you can select a helipad that's somewhere in this vicinity. I didn't import them all because it takes about 10 minutes to do it. So there's another one right around here if you want to try to land there. But the flight plan, just putting it in there might help you find where you're actually going if you don't want to hunt around in the sim for it. And you will definitely want to install the bookmark file. So the flight plan will be linked in the description. The bookmark file will be linked in the description. And it'll be a heck of a lot easier if you have a little nav map so you can track where you're going as you approach these, because some of them are very, very difficult to see. I think we're going to be able to spot every single one of them, but if you have not flown this and maybe watched me fly it so I can give you some VFR pointers, which might be the biggest benefit of watching this, it's going to be tough to see some of them. So that's what it looks like. It's about 35 miles in total, and I think this thing cruises between 80 and 100 knots before it'll get up to overspeeding. So let's put that over here, and I want to show you something else real quick. Before all of my flights, since I use the map enhancement so regularly, I'll pull up the Google Maps, I'll pull up the Bing Maps on another tab, and I'll just look to see which ones look the best, because this is what it'll look like in the sim for the most part. So the thing with the Google Map, and this happens a lot with Google Maps, you can see we've got some color transition areas here, and we're going to see these in the sim. This is what's going to be printed on the landscape. So as we're flying around, we'll see these color shifts like that. You won't get that with the Bing Map. It's pretty uniform all the way across. Any color changes you see are the natural color changes out here. And when you fly it in default, you'll actually see them change colors like this. But you're not going to get the very obvious map seams. But here's the problem with this. So this is what you would see if you're flying in default. Let's just go to one of the first geoglyphs that we're going to see out here. This one's called the baby condor. Kind of see a little bit of an outline there. As you get close, like flying in the sim close, you won't even be able to make it out. That's what it's going to look like in the sim if you do not use the map enhancement. So from here, you can kind of tell there's something there. You get close like you're flying the sim, you won't even be able to tell what it is. But look at it on the Google map. Let's go back down to that same spot over here. Look at that. So that's what it's going to look like when we're flying it, which is a big help out here. And I'm kind of curious. You see how dark this looks? It looks unnaturally dark. I'm kind of wondering if Google intentionally just increased the contrast like that to make it so you could see everything a lot better. Because you definitely will out here, and the detailing of all this stuff is really, really good. All these little rivulets and runoff areas here, it looks fantastic with that Google map. And again, it's the Google Pro map. If you just install the basic Google map with a free version, not going to look this good. In fact, it might look just as bad as the default stuff does. Okay, so that's that. And just in case we want to take a peek outside while we're flying around, let's adjust the camera real quick. This is the live weather. Beautiful day, as you can see. What kind of angle do we want? I don't know if we're going to have time to jump outside because there's going to be so much to see, but let's just kind of leave it like that and see how it goes. Okay. All right, let's see if we can get this baby up in the air. It's not too windy out here, which is great. You can see it's a little bit hazy off there in the distance. Bring her up nice and easy. And it also feels like you're always kind of leaning to the left because of how that cowl is sitting up there. So you kind of have to watch your artificial horizon there to get a sense of how you're tracking with that. So the town of Nazca would be just off to the right of our nose there. We're going to head in the other direction. I'll try to roughly fly runway heading. I've probably only got 45 minutes flying this thing so far, so still have not really mastered it by any means. But it flies pretty well. I really, really like it, mainly just because it's quirky. So even though this area was a central part of the Incan culture, once that popped up, the Incas had nothing to do with these lines. Those guys were around from roughly 1200 AD to the mid-1500s, disappearing after the European arrival along with all the other big indigenous populations. But these lines had already been here before the Incas got ramped up, like 1,000 years before. It's believed they were created by the Nazca culture, which existed from roughly 200 BC to 500 AD. And some of the very first lines are likely from the Paracas culture, which started back around 400 BC. So these things are old, really old. And the only reason there's still anything left to see is because it's so dry out here. And there's some speculation that it wasn't always like that, and the dryness is what may have wiped out those original cultures. They had built up a lot of agriculture out here, took down a lot of the trees that would have been growing out here. And after that, they just couldn't grow any crops. It got too dry and too sandy. And you can still see by the rivers here, it's a little bit green. But everything out where the lines are, bone dry. And something that really shocked me about seeing these, really for the first time on this trip, since we couldn't see any of the animal depictions on our last visit, we could see the big lines. But I was surprised by how small the actual pictures are. I mean, they're still big, and a couple are about what I was expecting, but most are surprisingly small. If all you've ever seen of them is from documentaries and Nat Geo magazines, you would think they are all enormous, but as you're soon going to see, that's not the case. I'll even go out on a limb and say that most of them are probably small enough that you might be able to come out here and make them without any help at all from aliens or flying machines of any kind. And I'll get to the theories about how they were made and why just a little bit later. So again, the Google map here, those fields look pretty good. We're going to see some areas where it looks like it's been airbrushed just a little bit, which is kind of odd because that would have been something they would have had to done in the Google map. But you can see the crop lines and everything really well. We got a few printed trees down there, but not too bad. All right, our first geoglyph is going to be called the whale. Or actually, I think it's balena in the local language. And for this one, what we're going to do is fly around to the other side of it. I'll show you how to spot it because you will definitely miss it. Once you come out here, there is the tail end of a long line. It's just the outline of a line. In other words, it's not cleared out in the middle. And when we see that, we will come around the other side of it. It's going to be down here to our right, and we'll see it out of the right side of the helicopter, and it's going to kind of be overlaying the end of the line once we see it. So I'm just looking for the line right now, and you can tell they have lines just everywhere out here. And there's a few of them. Get us warmed up. Okay, so here comes the outline of the line just to our right down there in the corner of the window. There's the corner of the line down in our little quarter window, and it's going to be straddling this other side of the line. So let's see if we can turn a little bit here and see it. There it is right down there. There's the top of it. Its face there. See the two little fins sticking out? Not real big, is it? It's right on the end of that line there before it starts to head away from us. It's straddling the line. That's the whale. So again, if you're looking at the boxy part of it, it's on the side facing us, right down there in the corner. And the next one up here is called the baby condor, and this is one of the smaller ones that we're going to see. And to find this one, you'll come out here into this first open valley, and on that mountain range across from it, this is the one that we saw in a little nav map and on the Google Maps before we jumped in here. Follow that mountain range all the way to where it peters out on the left, and it's going to be in the last little clump of hills all the way at the left. I'm going to try to kind of loop around here so we can see it well out of the right side of the helicopter. And it's kind of hard to tell. There's going to be some things that are original lines that look like track marks from tires, and you can see those going all over the place out here too. By the way, that road to the left is going to be a great VFR marker for us. We're going to be crossing back and forth over that, and it will help us get reoriented if we get off track. So just about dead ahead of us, you see where the mountain range kind of dips down and ends there? Not the second little range that forms back behind it. It's going to be right on that last corner, right off the right side of the nose. And we'll come up on it and get down and take a nice look at it. So again, on the default map, the ground terrain probably is not this blackish looking in real life. It looks a little bit more realistic, but the detailing is lost in all the little runoff areas down there. Okay, I'm not sure if it's on that last little hump or the one a little bit to the right. We'll get closer and then we'll spot it. Got a little bit closer here. I think it's going to be... Yeah, it's going to be on the right one then. I don't see it there on the one on the left, so let's turn this way just a little bit. Get it out of the right side of the helicopter. Well, where is it? Maybe it is. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's just right in the corner of our window right there. See it? There it is. So you would think you could probably have someone just standing at the bottom of the hill saying, nope, nope, go a little bit further with the beak there. Go a little bit deeper with the feet. That one probably wouldn't require any special skills to do something like that. And you know what I often think about? You know, every time archaeologists, and any archaeologist would probably agree with this, they come upon a place where they're just not really sure why people made something that seems out of the ordinary. It always seems to be designated as some sort of ritual area, which is exactly what most people believe this probably was. But I don't think you can ever discount the possibility that some of this stuff was just graffiti. You have a great area to make it. It kind of looks like graffiti, especially just the randomness of it. But there's a lot of theories about why this may be ceremonial, this whole area. One of them is that the ratio of very fine pottery to regular household pottery is like 70-30. And they think because that ratio is so high and there's not signs of just real big populations living and doing things out here, and it was all the really nice stuff they found, that this may have been a ceremonial area. The next one up here is going to be the astronaut, and what you're going to do, see the road goes ahead there and then kind of splits that mountain in half. We're going to go to the mountainside on the left, and then the astronaut is going to be all the way down here on the left side of that. And this looks nothing like an astronaut. Looks a little bit like an alien if you just assume everything drawn with a large head must be an alien. And I was a big Eric von Däniken fan back in the day. If any of you guys have read Chariots of the Gods or any of that stuff, I think it was written in the 1970s. I was reading those books when I was in elementary school. I was fascinated by it. That's when I first learned about this area. I don't really think after exploring this more and reading some more of the theories that this really has anything to do with aliens. And you guys know I'm a huge fan of aliens and the possibility of aliens visiting, but I don't really see any markers of things that really look that much like aliens. They just look like badly drawn figures with big heads. Although there's a couple we'll see at the end that look awfully peculiar. Look how detailed that ground is there. If it was just a little bit more lifelike in color, and if you didn't know that this whole area was lighter, which we'll see later, you might think that was the real color, but I don't think it is. I think that Google darkened that up for us so we could see things a little bit better. So as far as some of the theories about why they were drawing this stuff out here, I'll tell you all of them that I'm aware of, that I read about, and then I'll tell you the one that I think is probably the most likely. They think that some of them may have been used to... This one I think is probably the least likely. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me why someone would make the effort to do it, but they think they may have been markers to indicate where aquifers were, at least wells they could drill. But if you get higher and look down at this area, these lines are just all over the place. And you would think they would not need to go through that kind of effort just to show somebody where a well was. So that one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And as far as how you would go about making the really long, triangular shape, for the most part, lines, I think that would be fairly easy. All you have to do is make a really, really long rope and stretch it between some pegs in the shape that you want, and you've got your outline. That wouldn't be all that difficult. Okay, let's pause for just a minute because I need to find the astronaut here. He's going to be on that far corner over there, so we're going to have to circle around just a little bit. And he's kind of hard to see because he's very faint, so we'll try to come down some and get a good look at him. And if I didn't mention it before, the time of day is around between 7 and 8 a.m. I felt like I tried different times of the day, and none of these are elevated, so the shadows aren't going to help you, but I felt like it just added a little bit more contrast to have the sun lower in the sky, which helped out a bit. Okay, he's going to be on this corner that is just on the inside of our pillar right there, in that really dark area. We're going to have to get down pretty close to see him. And this is one that I thought would just be massive, because all the pictures I'd seen, I thought, wow, they're definitely talking to aliens with that thing, but as you're going to see, not all that big. Granted, we're probably 1,000 feet above it here, too. Alright, you can just start to see his feet there, on the very bottom, by where it starts to turn dark, and then you'll see his head coming into view. And in real life, he's got like his arms stretched out on this side of it. You see his giant eyeballs there, inside the head. Pretty crudely drawn. And if I would have thought about it, I would have measured how tall he actually is in Little Nav Map, but I don't think you could even see him in Little Nav Map. So you'd probably have to measure it on the Google Map, which is kind of a pain in the butt. Up next will be the cat. Also very small and extremely crudely drawn. Okay, so one possibility is that they were marking out where they could find water, which just seems ridiculous amount of work for something like that for me. The next thing that they were thinking is that maybe they were marking out like a ceremonial walkway where they would draw out the long, long lines, and then the shaman or whoever was making sacrifices or repenting or whatever would walk the lines, which seems like a reasonable possibility, I guess. I don't think they've ever found any other evidence of this culture doing that, but I guess it is a possibility. And I was thinking maybe if they did one of those deals where you like draw the whole shape with one continuous line, if you've ever seen artwork where they do that, maybe that would be a possibility, but most of them also don't appear to be drawn like that either. Although they do have some that seem to have an excessive amount of lines associated with them. Another theory is that maybe they were celestial markings, and I think this one may be kind of likely. There's so many of them out here that I think just by random chance you might have some that line up with the solstices and things like that, and you know all the cultures back then were of course sky worshipping, at least to a certain degree. Hold on just a minute, I'm trying to get my bearings. Okay, there's going to be like a tiny little hump of mountains sticking out up ahead. We're going to shoot for that. It's right behind our pillar right now, so we're going to circle around and take a look at this. They don't rise up very big at all, but you'll know them when you see them. See them right down there? They're coming into view. The cat's going to be on this side of it, on the far right, and we will definitely not see that till we come around. And again, this one's going to be kind of faint too. The rest of them are going to become much more apparent after these. And then they were thinking the shapes, if these were astronomical, may be crude depictions of whatever they believed the constellations were back then. So to find the cat, you see that white road coming to the bottom of the mountains there? Not where it crosses them, but right where it comes to the bottom of it. That's going to point right to where the cat is, after that little parking lot. And this thing is exceptionally crude. I think a kindergartner might have been able to do something better than this. And this one's also so small that I'm sure someone could just be standing on the ground saying, nope, nope, that line needs to go a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, erase that one, let's draw it again. Oh, we're going to have to come a lot closer here. So the feet are facing the bottom of the mountain. The head is going to be up by where that road bends there. That is really hard to see. And it's just so small. If you get closer, it's a little bit easier, but I don't want to come down and then have to bounce back up again because we need to cruise over a bit here. But you can see the two little paws touching that bend in the road there, the front paws. And then the very poorly drawn face. It's got like an open mouth and two eyes. The tail's that thing sticking off to the side. But that's small, isn't it? Really small. And we're getting great performance out here. When I had my frame rate counter on, it's like in the 50s, but as soon as we stop to look at a geoglyph and then I look away, we're going to get a stutter every time. I don't know why. It doesn't drop the frame rates or anything. It just does that. Maybe you'll have better luck than me. The next thing up here is going to be called the hands, which actually kind of look like the feet of something that might be a bird on top of the hands, and then a tree, which definitely looks like a tree. But I think we cannot, again, rule out the possibility of graffiti. I would definitely be doing something like this. And after we look at these, I'll tell you how I think they probably did it, which is not my idea. But some other people had come up with a possibility that this is how they made these really, really big ones, of which we're not really at yet. Okay, hands are going to be in this lighter area, not the one directly to our right, but you can see like almost a false shading where it starts to get really light up here by that road. They're going to be just on this side of the road in that light-colored area, and the tree is going to be right on the other side of the hands. The hands will be facing us and the body of the thing. Okay, so let's see. There's the hands. You can just start to see them. They're very, very faint. And it almost looks like there's a bird or something on top of the hands. You see the two hands there? There's a line going right through the head of it, I guess. Just about to go out of view. Oh yeah, once you move past them, you can see them a lot better. And then here's the tree. So you can see there are some printed cars down there. That'll give you a sense of the actual size. Some printed cars on the road right there in front of us. So I'm thinking maybe 100 feet by 100 feet. On the long end, maybe 200 by 200. It looks like another little hand down there. And there's just like random stuff out here. I mean, it's just everywhere. Some of them don't make like a complete shape of any kind, so they didn't mark it out as something. But it's just everywhere. So one possibility for how they made the bigger ones, and we're going to see the first really big one up here, it's called the parrot, is that maybe they map them out on a grid that they would then scale up. In other words, there's a parrot. See his head right there on the right? And then his wings are coming back behind him. He's got like a big beak or something, or a gizzard hanging off to the right of it. That's a pretty good size one there. And then they would just lay out a grid of ropes over the depiction they wanted to make, and then just scale it up square by square based on their original layout. And some people might think, well, that sounds awfully advanced for a primitive civilization, but if they'd figured out agriculture, they could probably handle that too. Okay, up here we're going to have the flamingo on the right side of this big line, the thick line, and then we got some spirals on the left side of it. You can see the spirals down there, and you can see the wings of the flamingo up by the top right side of the line right there. You see the wings of it? It's kind of run over by the washout there. And then we're going to have a tiny, tiny little thing that they call the orca at the very end of this rectangle right here. We're going to have to get real close to see it. It's going to be in the top left corner of that rectangle on the other side of the end of it. It's on the other side of that runoff area there. So there's the end of the rectangle, the runoff, and then let's see how close we can get. And then there's going to be the thing they're calling an orca. It's right to our right down there. You see it? So the head is on this side, the tail bends around and comes up on the other side of it. And then it's got some fins sticking out the top and the bottom. Ugh, my pillar's getting in the way. There it is, look, quick. Yeah, there's really not any relief to the lines at all. There's relief, it appears, once you get a little bit higher to the runoff areas. But really none to the lines. Okay, so here comes the flamingo again. We're flying over his head right now. There's his wings stretching out there. We got our spirals again over to the right. And something else below him there. I can't really tell what that is. And let's see. Let me look at a little nav map to see what we got coming up next here. Okay, so the next one is going to be the flower, and that is going to be hanging off the end of a big rectangular line up here, and you won't miss this one. It's pretty clear. Where are you, flower? Scanning in our little quarter window there. No, not that one. We're not there yet. Look at all these things. Everywhere. They've been out here for 2,000... That thing directly to the right is called a frigate bird. You can see the long tail stretching away from us, and then the wings are coming out of view right now. Doesn't look much like a bird because the bird part of it has been obscured by overdriving or other things later on. Okay, right off the corner of our nose, that rectangle up there, the flower is going to be hanging off the end of that thing. And you will not miss it. It's very clear. See some more trucks down there on that road. Alright, it's right down in our little corner window there. You see the flower? We'll get a better view as we come around here. Also extremely crude. Look at that. You can definitely tell it's a flower. Or a palm tree, maybe. Boy, that one's very clear. Okay, and then right on the right side of the other end of this rectangle is probably one of my favorite ones. It's the spider, which is very obviously a spider and actually quite well done. But not real big. And there it is right there. It just came into the view on the side of our pillar. You see that? That looks fantastic. Look at that thing. I wonder if they had to clean any of these up. I mean, if the Incas were out here and they've been out here for 2,000 years, you'd think just people stepping on them and stuff. I bet they had to clean some of these up a little bit. Alright, that is the condor right there in the corner. Also looks pretty good. You can see his wings, no problem. And then next is the dog, which is really hard to see because he's really small and kind of faint. So I'm scanning and looking for him right now. That might be that white spot just off the right of our nose up there. We'll see once we get closer. No, I don't think that's it. Alright, so we'll just keep heading down a little bit further. Is it the dog? Nope, that's just a white spot. Here he is. He just came into view. Is that it? Nope, nope, nope. Sorry, that's not it either. False alarm. There he is. He's in the corner of our window right now. Very small. We'll come around so his feet are on the other side of us. His head is up on this side of us, facing away from us. You can see his head now. Not real big. That's another one you could probably draw just standing there on the ground looking at it. And then next will be the monkey, and you'll know him because he's got a giant spiral tail up over his back. So that's the first thing that we'll see. Then here's where we're going to get that big color change up here. And even after the color changes, really, I think you can spot them still pretty well, because we'll see a few that are in the lighter areas that'll be easy to make out. Looking for the big spiral. Okay, it's right to the right of those lines right there. See the spiral over there and the legs? All those lines, it's just off the corner on the other side. You can see his feet hanging down. His tail is touching that little channel there. And his round-shaped head. I would circle all these so you could really get a good view, but we'd be out here forever. This will at least get you to him. You can take all the time you want to look at him. On your own. We got stuff to see. Next will be the hummingbird, which I think is going to be on that flat plateau in front of us on the other side of that little valley there. And off to the right of that is something that they called this star that does have a marker on the Google map, but all it looks like is just a central point with lines coming out of it. Nothing very fancy. There's a very, very large geometrical shape inside of a square out here somewhere, but it's so faint you couldn't spot it. I flew past it, but it's one of the more famous depictions that are out here, to the extent that it is a depiction. Alright, hummingbird. It's going to be right down here in the corner of our window. I can't quite see it yet, but that's the area that it should be in. Okay, it's very faint. His beak is pointing away from us. You can just see his tail. His wings are outstretched to the side. That one's tough too. Really tough and kind of small. But he's down there. Rewind a little bit. Go back and look for it. Okay, to get to this next spot, you're going to come up to this road here in front of us and then just follow the road for a little bit. And it's also kind of interesting to me that they didn't put more of them out in that giant open expanse, but started putting a lot of them out here. And I think maybe because they wanted some more mountainsides to put them on, because again, it would be a heck of a lot easier if someone could just stand at the bottom of the mountain, then at least you could see what you're working on. Or yell up at your buddy if he's the one working on it. So that's most of what we're going to see from here is stuff on the sides of mountains. Of course, they still have the regular old lines all over the place. This next one I thought for sure were just tire track marks. It looks like someone doing donuts, but it's called the 8 in the desert, I think, if I was translating that correctly. And it looks like a figure 8. It actually looks like medical shears. Like those scissors that have a little bend at the end of them. It looks exactly like that, actually. And the Google map said there's something they called the shark right next to it. I couldn't find it on the Google map or in the sim. But if you feel like exploring a little bit more out here, it would be just on the other side of the figure 8 once we get there, if the marker was accurate. And you can see how much more detailed the landscape gets after we get away from that black and white area back there. Looks like they got a little construction area down there. The 8 is not in this opening, I don't think. I think it's in the next one. Yep, it's the next one. It's going to be right next to the road. The tip of the scissors are going to come right down. I'm calling them scissors. Come right down to the road. Alright, it's really small. You'll be able to see it. See those two little circles down there? They're probably a finger's width, depending on how big your screen is. They're right at that bend in the road. The end of the scissors are pointing at the bend in the road there. Can we turn a little bit more? You see it down there? It's about to leave the corner of our screen. Either that or they had some middle schoolers out here. I've seen pictures like that before. And I don't know if you caught that little red thing. It just went behind our hood area there. I have no idea what that is. I couldn't find that on the maps. I don't know why it came out here in the sim as red. Very strange, like a cranberry bog or something. Alright, for this next one we've got another orca. And for this we're going to deviate from the road here and just point towards that opening where that green stuff is. And it's going to be on the far mountains just to the right of the lower mountains. To the right of that green space there. So just head towards the green stuff, and then once we get down there, I'll kind of face it, and we'll come down some so we can get a good look at it. And this one really has that kind of ancient South American art motif to it. Very neat looking. If you haven't seen it before, out along the coast, not far from here, if you Google it, you'll be able to find it. There's something called, I think it's called the Paracas Candelabra, which looks like a giant, and I mean this thing really is giant, right along the coast on a big dune by the coast. Candelabra. Well, it looks like a candelabra anyway. You can see it very well in the sim. You should go check that thing out. And that one is really old. I think that was part of the Paracas culture, I believe, which was the ones that were out here before the Nazca culture, which was way before the Inca culture. But fly past that and check it out. It's some neat scenery out there anyway, right along the coastline. Okay, it's on the rock face or the cliff face that just came into the corner there, right on the other side of the corner of those fields. It actually might be on that next little dip. I can't see it yet from here. Yeah, it is. It's on the other side of that little opening there, so we'll get closer so you can get a nice look at this. Ooh, we're going to have to get a lot closer. But it's worth it. It looks that good. Okay, it's just starting to come into view here. This one is really detailed and really, really ornate. So the head is on this side. You can see all the fins sticking off there. And it looks like they drew out some other shapes and stuff around it. Look at that. That is definitely like ancient Mexican culture. Look at that thing. You would totally guess that that was from somewhere in South America. Looks just like that early South American art. Look at this. More lines everywhere. But it does kind of make you wonder why all of... There's very few that were purely rectangular. Most, if they're not totally triangular, are at least kind of tapered on one side or the other, which does make you think they might have been trying to point at something. Now we're going to start coming up on some more alienish looking humanoid figures, and this first group is called the Observers, which might only serve to bias you a little bit if you're alien leaning, but they do look kind of alienish. But all the figures of all the faces that you'll see out here for humans all have huge eyes, most don't have noses, and a little slit mouth. So that may have just been how they were drawing humans back here, back in the day. Or maybe they're just drawing aliens. And these are also all going to be along this line. And what I'm going to do is kind of turn sideways, almost like I'm slipping into it, and try to get the nose pointing at it so we can see them off the nose. Because then we got to cut across this mountain range here. We'll see if we can get down a little bit. And they're kind of hard to spot because they're small, but once you see them, you'll know you spotted them because they stand out pretty well. They're just small. Let me just slow down some here. Okay, let's see. Not on that face. Oh yeah, they are. They're right there. Okay, they're just above our bar, crossing over to the right of the cowl, coming into that right corner by our pillar, on the left side of the pillar. See them there? Now they're in the corner window. All the faces that we're going to see look kind of like that. Usually kind of rectangular in shape. Eyes and mouth, no noses. Interesting, huh? Wait till you see these next ones. These are the most alienish looking of them all. It's going to be more clumps of humanoid figures. The first group is called the Royal Family. How they came up with that name, I do not know. I couldn't find any information about it. And then after that, we're going to see a larger couple of figures called the Traveler. They have a Traveler West and a Traveler East. So two of them. About 10 miles directly west of where we took off from, there are some big ruins of pyramids. They got about 40 of them down there. Don't look that great in the sim, though, just to blow it for you. But I want to point that out because it is the only evidence of ancient buildings that are out here, the big clumps of them anyway. And archaeologists believe they were probably Nazca structures, which would date them between the turn of the first millennium and 500 AD. And early theories proposed that was the site of the Nazca capital. But as they continued to excavate, they didn't find, again, many permanent dwelling artifacts. So they just assumed that, again, that this entire valley and that region was just a pilgrimage site of some kind. They also found evidence that people may have been consuming hallucinogenic beverages, and if that's true, well, that kind of explains a lot about this, doesn't it? Alright, so we want to get this out of the right side of the helicopter here. And we're going to come a little bit closer. You can start to see some of them there. And then after this group of people, there is the one that I'll go ahead and just call an alien because he looks very alienish. So we have those guys right down there to the right. Kind of alien looking, I guess. Look at that little guy up in the top there. He's got a little helmet or something on. But check out this next one. He's all by himself. And he definitely looks like an alien or a gremlin. See him right down there in the corner with his huge eyes? He's like all eyeballs and eyelashes. See that? Looks like something out of a Dr. Seuss book. And then here we have the Travelers, which looks like they have sombreros on. There's one of them. He's got a big sombrero. And there's another one with a huge sombrero. That may be like the first iterations of the earliest mariachi bands. Again, eyes and mouth. That's it. How crazy is that? So what do you guys think? I mean, I think for most of these, especially on the mountainsides, you wouldn't need to make grids or anything else. You could just have someone standing there. Before seeing these in the sim, again, I'd only seen pictures up close and from the ground. I would have thought these things were like hundreds of feet long, but as you've seen, most of them are quite small and could probably be made just by someone standing on the ground barking out instructions to someone. Now, the giant things like the frigate bird, the parrot, some of the flamingos, the condors, which are very precise and very big, probably did require some sort of grid scaling. But most of these other things, the cat, the astronaut, they're just so poorly drawn. Not that big, and on the sides of mountains, I think you could probably get away with just standing there and yelling. Look at this, we got more lines all the way out here. They're on the top of these mountains. The first trip we took out here, I used one of these strips, I call it a strip, on top of these mountains as our runway when we took off. I think it was our last Nazca flight. We're going to have another Pelican coming up here, and I thought this was huge, even when I was looking at it on the satellite map, which made it very hard for me to find it out here. I had to fly over several times. It's not as big as you would think looking at it on the satellite map, and it's kind of faint here. And they call it a pelican because it's got, like, its upper beak has a big circle at the end of it, and then he's got, like, a big lower jaw that's kind of, like, sticking off on the other side of him, so his head will be facing away from us. And he's going to be right at the end of this ridge coming up on our right here. There's going to be a line on the top of the end of that ridge. He'll be just to the left of that line in a little open area. You'll very faintly see the lines for the wings. And this one might also be precise enough to have possibly been a grid drawing, if that's how they did it. And then as we come around, I think you'll probably see the circular thing, which would be part of the top bill. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to see the longer lower bill sticking off, which will go away from us, kind of following that line up there. See that little area that's open just to the left of the line? It's right behind the pillar right now. That's where the whole figure is going to be. The first thing you'll see will be the very faint wing markings. The wings are stretching down towards us here. You see the very thin lines there? And we should be able to see the circular thing. Well, you can just barely see it. Really barely see it. Let's see if it changes as we come around. You see the circle there kind of in the corner, and then the upper bill extends along that ridge there. Yeah, that one's tough to see. If you look directly above it on the Google map, it's easier to make out. Look at that stuttering, how it does that. Every time we look away, it does that. I've been looking around all over this trip at all the other stuff. It's only when we pause to look at a picture and look away that it does that. Lines everywhere. Yeah, I don't know how you could confidently say that these were pointing to any kind of celestial events because they just point in every direction. That one's got some lumps in the middle of it. This last one is called Los Dios, or the Twins, and it's going to be right on this mountain off to our right, just on the other side of the pillar, maybe behind it right now, and then we're going to just circle right around and land on our alien flying saucer pad, which will be at the end of this line behind it. Okay, these guys you'll see clearly, but they're small too, so you won't really see them until we get right up on them. Look how detailed that runoff area there is. So they must get some rain if they've got all these channels out here. But not enough to wash anything away, and it kind of makes you wonder if there might have been at one time some stuff below that did just get washed away. Alright, twinsies, where are you? You won't miss these guys. Once we see them, we'll know. They're probably behind the pillar right now. Yeah, they're faint. Okay, they're down in our corner window. There's two of them, and their heads are just below that little open area there. See the little face there, the white face? Again, just eyes and a mouth. And the little one next to him that kind of looks like he's wearing an astronaut's helmet. And that might be a sombrero too, though. All he needs is a big, huge guitar. A little trumpet. Alright, let's see if I can put this thing down. I think we can probably do it. This, by the way, was cheaper than most of the other Cowan Sim helicopters. And I'm just a sucker. I'll buy any helicopter as long as it's not rated like a 2. There's a big handful of them in the marketplace that have just been so poorly rated that I'm not even going to waste my money on them. But anything I've ever gotten from Cowan Sim, I have not been disappointed. So once again, great work. Let's see if I can get close to where it tapers off here. This does seem to have a pretty pronounced ground effect once you get down there. I've had a few instances where I blew myself back, but I do that almost every time anyway. And it's kind of hard to tell what your angle of attack is with this too. Whoa, 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 whoa. There we go. Give it a little collective there. Bounce us up. Alright, now we'll ease her down. Ease her down gently. Ease her down. And got it. Alright, well, not much to see on little nav map because you can't see anything on little nav map, but the flight plan will be included and the bookmark file. How do we turn this thing off? I think we can turn the fuel pump off if I can find that. Which, nope, maybe just the fuel valve. What does that do? Let's just turn everything off. No, that's for our clutch, I think. Oh, there's a fuel valve. Okay. So that's it, guys. Check it out. You have the ultimate scavenger hunt here. Now you can see everything, but again, you got to get the pro version of the map, which is the payware version. You get that. You get in here, you should be able to see everything just as we did. Learned all kinds of amazing things as always. Had an absolute blast, and I cannot wait to see you all again in the skies. Later.